how to stop anxious thoughts without fighting them, how to apply acceptance or non-resistance to actual thoughts. This is one of the most common questions we get, or something that people in our program tend to struggle with most. This is, if you've heard me talk about acceptance, if you watched our videos on non-resistant acceptance, you know that's the way we teach people to respond to anxiety symptoms. But there's also a thing as thoughts, thought patterns, right? Negative thoughts, for example, anxious thoughts. How do we deal with them? Well, simply said, in the same way, but it tends to become very tricky very easily. And in this video today, I want to share a lesson that one of our mentors, Johnny, shared with us in my program on the community side of things. It's a little advanced, but it'll give you a good overview of how to deal with your anxious thoughts and why the way you're currently dealing with your thoughts may be the reason why they are so intrusive. Johnny is a wonderful guy, you'll see in a second, and he joined our program a couple of years ago. He suffered from anxiety for about 20 years, and he's made an incredible journey. As I said, he's now one of our mentors, one of our advisors. And this video he created for people in the program, but I thought it was so good, I wanted to share it with all of you. So it's one of the deepest explanations of why anxious thoughts can persist that I've seen so far. So without further ado, check this out. Grab a pen, grab a notebook, and the last thing I want to say is, here's Johnny.
I want to shed some light on how the whole non-resistance, acceptance, allowance piece works for thoughts and thinking, because that can be a lot more difficult for people to understand, because thoughts are just going to be less visceral, right, than like panic attacks, physical symptoms, those strong feelings. So because there's something that we feel less, it can be more confusing on how exactly we do the whole non-resistance thing with it. So if you're someone that's been in the course for a while and you've been doing great, you know, you're getting really good at responding to panic attacks, maybe you're good at responding to those physical symptoms, but you're still finding yourself stuck in your head, hopefully this video is for you. This is going to be a complicated video. It might be a long video. So if you're the type of person that wants to take notes, make sure you grab a pen and a notepad and pause me whenever you want. So why do anxious thoughts remain and grow, right? Why do we get stuck in our head for so long? Sometimes it can be months or even years with the same thought theme running through our head on repeat, like we're hostages in our own mind. Well, it starts with the thought appearing. Notice I didn't say you creating the thought, all right? We definitely consciously do create thoughts at times, for sure, but the vast majority of thoughts we experience are not consciously created. They are a subconscious creation, right? They are of a subconscious genesis. When that thought appears, right, what happens right away to every single thought is a level of salience is assigned. Well, what's salience? Okay, well, we're going to put this really simple. Salience is the importance that your brain puts on thoughts, experiences, feelings, or situations. You could think of it as a this matters level that your brain is giving a thought, right? If you want to look up salience and understand it further, that's something that maybe is worth doing, because it's actually really interesting and fascinating how all this takes place. There's a lot of modifiers of the salience that our brain will put on thoughts, including but not limited to repetition of the thought. You know, if we have the thought over and over and over and over and over, sometimes the salience can be increased for that kind of a thought. Behavioral response is a really big deal, right? What we do in reaction to the thought is, we're going to talk about that more, because our behavior is going to then often dictate the emotional state and the assumed meaning that the thought has as well. So, you know, you can see why that's probably a pretty big deal. And there are more modifiers of salience. This is not a complete list by any means, but I'm just kind of trying to help you to understand this word, because this word is pretty important whenever we're looking at this kind of a thing. So once the level of salience is assigned, typically what happens is anxiety increases, because we notice that this anxious thought feels very true and very important, right? And we don't like the way it's making us feel. We're feeling anxious. It's getting in our head. So we resist it, right? We analyze the thought. Oh, is this true? What do I need to do? We reassure ourselves. No, this isn't going to happen. This scary thought. No, it's not going to happen. It's okay. It's okay. I'm going to do breathing exercises now. We suppress it, right? We just squeeze. It's like you're trying to make your mind into something that's constipated, right? You avoid situations that create these thoughts. Let's say that you have health anxiety, so you don't watch medical shows because you know that could create a scary health thought. We distract ourselves from the thought. The thought comes up, let me call my friend, let me go for a walk, let me play some video games, let me do anything to keep my mind off this thought. Then we're doing it and we're like, is it still there? Is it still there? That's the checking for it too, right? Or we mentally solve the thought. Like we need to come up with a plan or an answer for this thought. And a lot of times we're doing all this stuff and more all at the same time. All right. We are trying to go in and do battle with the thought so we can slay it like a dragon, right? When we do this, we resist these thoughts. One of two things happens. Either the thought goes away, we get the freedom, right? All of a sudden our mind's calm and clear. That probably almost never happens though, does it? A lot of times the thought's going to persist. And so if the thought persists, anxiety increases even further because adrenaline biases the brain towards assigning greater salience to things relevant for survival. If a thought feels dangerous, like you need to come up with a solution for it, salience is going to be increased every single time that our anxiety is increasing along with it. And then, because everything's stronger, we just resist it again, right? Analyzing, reassuring, suppressing, avoiding, whatever it is. And then either it works or it doesn't. But every time it doesn't work, we're just going to keep going through this little mini loop here, resisting it until eventually at some point it will go away. Not forever, but it'll be out of your mind enough. Something will come up, right? And then, okay, at least you feel a little bit better. But neural adaptation still takes place here. Your reactions, your responses were treated as evidence that the thought must be important. All right? Because you wouldn't have spent that much time engaging and interacting with something that did not matter. Right? You wouldn't have a random thought of a jellyfish and then just like be going through that for 3 weeks. Like you wouldn't do that. If you did, you'd be thinking about jellyfish all the time. So your reactions are treated as evidence that the thought was important. So then the thoughts become stickier. Why do they become stickier? They become stickier because the brain learned that the thought was worth attention because you gave it attention. The brain wants to help you do what you do naturally and do it more automatically. So it's going, oh, if we're giving thoughts like that attention, they must be worth the attention. And that means a thought should not be allowed to simply disappear without being solved or fixed. Next time we have this thought pop up subconsciously, we're gonna make it stick because we've learned, right? We being us, the brain, the nervous system, that this thought needs solved first. So salience of this thought increases, right? The assigned salience that this thought's going to get off the bat next time is just going to be even higher. Because of all the things that we've done to teach our nervous system and brain that these types of thoughts are important, right? And just like in the last video I did, these are subconscious processes. We don't notice these in real time. We don't know this is happening, right? All that we see is this side of the loop. Where the thought appears, we feel, ooh, damn, that's serious. Then we feel anxious, so we resist it, right? The thought persists. Oh my gosh, I'm really panicking now. We resist it again and we go around and around until finally we get booted out, kicked off right here. And then this is our plan next time it comes up. But what we don't realize is every single time that we go through this cycle here, that it is just strengthening the thought next time. As neuroadaptation increases, the thoughts become stickier and salience increases, right? Next time, that thought is going to be even more important off the bat, right? That is where repetition, behavioral response will influence emotional state and the assumed meaning that the thought has, okay? And then these subconscious mechanisms play into fear of our own mind. I remember this. I was terrified of being in my head. It felt like the most dangerous place in the world to be. Because at any time I could be doing anything, having a great day with my family and friends, and all of a sudden a thought pops up that I have to do battle with, and I might be battling it for 3 months. And while I'm battling it, I'm not getting anything else done. I'm not happy. I'm not smiling. I am disassociated, at war with my own mind. If you're watching this video, I have to assume you know what that feels like, and I'm genuinely sorry. But at the same time, this is not a life sentence, okay? There's a way out of this. How to free yourself. The thought appears, right? That's still where it starts. You're still not going to be able to control when thoughts appear and when they don't. This is a subconscious mechanism. And look, guys, it's just not realistic to assume that you're going to be in a mind one day that never throws out scary thoughts ever. All right? That's not realistic. Your mind is designed to protect you. All right? What we're recovering from isn't the idea that your brain is capable of creating a thought that's scary. It is recovering from the reaction that we give it, right? That increases the salience and makes it pop up and makes it sticky, and we feel like we need to battle it, and then we're stuck in our mind forever. That's what we're getting out of, okay? So it still starts with a thought appearing. And a level of salience is still assigned, right? And if we're early, that level of salience is still going to be pretty high. It's going to feel like a really important, serious thought, right? And it might feel so important and so serious that this part might feel reckless, genuinely, all right? I remember at one point, I had left my house. I was going to the movies with my friends. And I was like, oh my God, what if I left the stove on? What if I left the oven on, right? And I'm thinking, okay, well, if I left the oven on and then it burns down the house, like, oh my God, what if like that's my house? What if it catches fire of the houses near it? What if this is a whole catastrophe and disaster? And it felt really, really important. It felt really serious. Like I was being reckless for not going back and checking, but I understood this loop, right? I understood that by going back and checking, all I'm doing is teaching the brain that when we get that thought, we better act on it no matter what. So I went, you know what? I'm going to sit here and watch this movie. I'm not going to go home. And maybe my house will be on fire when I get home, or maybe it won't. But either way, I'm going to sit here and do this, right? It's worth mentioning that I didn't have any good reason to believe I had left the oven on, all right? The reason the thought felt so true was because of the anxiety and the salience. So I tell you that story because I want you to know that like it might feel reckless at first. It might feel like you're doing something crazy. And I'm not encouraging you to be reckless. I'm encouraging you to understand that these thoughts are going to feel important and serious when you first start this, because that's what we've taught our brain over time. That's what our brain has learned. But we still go ahead and we be brave and we be courageous and we do the non-resistance. All right. We're going to allow the uncertainty and anxiety that this thought brings. We're not coming up with an answer or a plan for the thought if it wants that. We're not doing that. We're also not going to try and make it go away. We are going to let the thought be there. All right? We are going to let it be there. Don't make this more complicated than it needs to be, guys. Please let it be there. Genuinely. All right? Like you are letting my words hit your brain right now. You're letting it be there. All right, this isn't complicated. It's difficult. It's not the same as it being complicated. This is hard to do because it can be scary and it can be uncomfortable. It's not hard to do because it's complicated. All right, let the thought be there. You don't need to make it go away. It's like if you thought of, I'll go back to a jellyfish. Like if you randomly thought of a jellyfish, you just let the thought be there. You wouldn't be like, okay, how do I get this jellyfish out of my head right now? You wouldn't do that. You would just like be non-reactive to it, all right? It's harder with this because these thoughts feel true, scary, dangerous, and important, but the mechanism of what we do, that's the same, all right? You know how to do this already. It is difficult, though. It's simple, but it's difficult. When we do this too, look, the thoughts early on may just get louder right off the bat. Why? Because our brain has learned these thoughts are important, and we're not giving it the attention that our brain has learned that these kind of thoughts need. So the brain's going to go, well, I must not be speaking loud enough. And it's going to turn up the volume of the thoughts and go, hey, look at me, look at me, look at me, right? And it's okay if you look at it, all right? This isn't about like squeezing and not being aware of any of your thoughts. It's impossible. You're not going to win that fight. This is about not feeling the need to make the uncomfortable feeling the thought is bringing go away. Like you're going to let yourself be uncomfortable because you realize that fighting it like you've been doing hasn't worked great. All right. And then we're going to engage with life. What would you be doing right now if you weren't stuck on your head? Would you be hanging out with your family? Would you be reading a book? Maybe you'd be going for a walk. Maybe you would be calling a friend, right? I bring those things up because I mentioned them in the whole distraction part. The context is different here, though. If we're going for a walk or calling a friend because we're trying to get the thought out of our head, that's us resisting it, right? It's us teaching the brain it's important because we're trying to make it go away. It must matter. This is about going, hey, I'm going to call my friend or go on a walk with the thought. I'm bringing the thought with me. It doesn't have to go away. All right. When we do all this, neural adaptation takes place again. Maybe subconsciously there was still some engagement, but there was less engagement for sure, right? We just let it go. We didn't do the whole conscious thing with it. There's less engagement, and our lack of engagement is treated as evidence that the thought isn't as important as the brain thought it was, right? We're typically not going from 10 out of 10, we're fully engaging consciously, we're trying to control it, to just 0 out of 10 perfect resistance. Like, that does take time, right? Because the subconscious mind also has to start to let go of that loop. So this isn't about going from completely interacting with it like maybe we have been, to completely not interacting with it. That's not what this requires. This requires less engagement. That's what it requires, right? And your lack of engagement, or the less engagement, was treated as evidence that the thought wasn't as important as the brain thought it was. So the thoughts can become less sticky because, due to us not engaging the same way that we have been, the thought must lack the importance of one worth reacting to in the way that we have been, right? So maybe, especially early on, maybe it's still important, but it's not as important. There's other thoughts that are equally important, like, what are we going to have for dinner? Maybe. So salience gets to decrease a bit. That whole assigned salience, right? This whole loop right here, it's going to be lower next time, because the fact that we engaged less means the thought must have not been as important, means it doesn't need to be as sticky, right? So next time it's going to be a little bit weaker. And remember, over on this side, this is all subconscious too. This is subconscious too. All right? We're not going to be aware of this stuff. And the reason that this is going to get hard as hell at first is because, again, all that we'll be aware of is the thought appearing, feeling anxious about it, not resisting it, and noticing that the thought might get louder, and then feeling like we're not doing it right because the subconscious mind is still going in there and checking. This is why it can be so confusing and so complicated. All right, listen. I'm not trying to give tough love here, but I've been through this. I know this is hard. I know it's scary. I know it sucks. But understand that the mechanism here genuinely is simple. It really is just about being willing to experience the uncomfortable feeling, the uncertainty, and the feeling that maybe we're being reckless by not researching all the symptoms of XYZ rare disease because we noticed that we maybe kind of had one of them, right? It can feel reckless, but this is the path. Okay, this is the path I've taken. This is the path that the other mentors have taken, right? This is what we have to do so we can teach our brain that these thoughts aren't important, all right? But it is tough because, like I said at first, it isn't going to feel like it's doing much of anything. You're just going to notice it's loud and I'm engaging with it anyway, so I'm doing something wrong, all right? But if we stick here long enough over time, right, this is what creates an indifference to thoughts because we're not afraid of them anymore. Because the salience of them has gone down. They feel less important, right? We're not reacting to them in the same way. That scary thought pops up. We know what to do. You know, over time, once we get good at it, the thoughts don't get louder early on anymore. Like that whole getting louder when you don't resist a thing, that might stop genuinely, right? Eventually, your subconscious mind will stop doing its whole subconscious engagement thing, because right now that's a pattern, right, that we've learned because we've been engaging consciously so long that our nervous system has learned that it should help us with that by doing it subconsciously. But this will reverse over time too. This is how we free ourselves. It's not sexy. It's not super fun early on, and it can be confusing if we're doing it right? And it's this kind of bottom half here that makes it so confusing. So hopefully through seeing the whole thing play out, you understand why this works, right? Maybe you understand why you feel like you've been doing it wrong, but maybe you're not, right? This part right here trips up people all the time. They think that the subconscious engagement is their fault, but really it's not something you can genuinely control. And the harder you try to control that, the more you're just resisting, right? We are controlling the conscious engagement. We are controlling what we're consciously doing. I have a couple of ending thoughts that I'd like to throw out there for you. Some quotes, maybe a little bit of a story. So there's a quote by Marcus Aurelius, And he says that we often suffer more in imagination than reality, right? Damn if that's not true. I mean, there might be something that we fear happening to us, right? Some kind of a scary bad thing. And maybe it happens to us, maybe it doesn't. But we suffer the whole time leading up to it, fearing the worst, interacting with it, trying to solve for a catastrophe that maybe isn't even likely, right? This isn't about guaranteeing nothing bad ever happens to us. That's not realistic. This is about understanding that all of the suffering involved leading up to it and even during it is oftentimes a product of our mind and the way that we've been interacting with it. There's a quote from Taoism. It goes something like this: all suffering is due to confused thoughts about the way things were supposed to go. Right? A little story that kind of feeds into that. There's I don't know if you want to call it a metaphor. It's like, like a parable maybe. It's about a farmer. And again, this is kind of a paraphrase, but there's a farmer and he has a beautiful farm, and a wild horse shows up to his farm. And his neighbors go, "Oh, what a beautiful, how lucky are you? Look at this horse. This is so awesome." And the farmer says, "Maybe." And then his son sees the horse and he loves the horse, so he gets on it and he rides the horse, and he's riding the horse, and then he falls off of the horse and he breaks his leg. And then all the neighbors go, "Oh, what a tragedy. Your son broke his leg. Oh no, this is awful." And then the farmer goes, "Maybe." And then the military comes to the farm. They're recruiting for a war. They're drafting every able-bodied young man. And they take a look at the farmer's son and notice his leg is broken. So they can't take him off to war. And the neighbors go, "Oh my gosh, what incredible luck. Your son has broken his leg and it will repair and he won't have to risk his life." And the farmer goes, "Maybe." Right? This is, all suffering is confused thoughts about the way that we think things were supposed to go. If you had asked me whenever I was 5 years old if I wanted to spend 20 years suffering through anxiety, worrying, captive by my own mind, I would have told you absolutely not. I would have done anything I could to avoid that. But now here I am, and having gone through it has been the greatest blessing I was ever given. I get to work with an AnxietyWave, which for me is an incredible, incredible gift, incredible blessing. I get to help people. I get to take the suffering that I went through and make it mean something, right? So if you had asked 5-year-old Johnny if he wanted to go through 20 years of anxiety, the most wise thing he could have said was, maybe.